welcome back, everybody, to the last and final episode of Pop Reads from the Book of Carolla, because our man has a lot of good knowledge in his head. Let's get back to it. Time to call it a life. I've always said life is just a time between crapping yourself. I'm planning on trademarking that phrase and putting it on a series of inspirational posters. I have a lot of thoughts about the beginning and the end of our time on this mortal coil. I recently did a live show and invited my old partner, Dr. Drew, and my old roommate, Ralph German, now star of the Kevin and Bean morning show, to join us on stage. Ralph's wife was pregnant at the time. Drew's triplets were all grown up and my twins were 3.5. But the one thing we all had in common was infertility. For some reason, the gainfully employed non-drug abusers who look at marriage as a lifetime commitment, or at least until the youngest hits junior college, couldn't figure out a way to shit out a kid without 20 trips to the fertility specialist. But if two dimwits hump in the back of a van in a Walmart parking lot, they can easily add a tenth to their brood of future addicts and welfare recipients. It seems that the higher the education level and tax bracket, the lower the sperm count. Whether you're a fan of God or Darwin, what the F is his plan? The couple that has to make sure their mullets don't get tangled while they're literally knocking boots can have a kid for the cost of, 6-pack of Strohs. My kids cost me $50,000. There were pills and injections for my wife, and I had to beat off into containers at facilities. Talk about killing something I love. It took all the majesty and romance out of having at myself while my wife was asleep in the next room. You don't realize that your balls have their own schedule until a doctor is telling you when to have sex and when to whack off. I would ask my wife, can't I just beat off into Tupperware in the comfort of my own bathroom and then rush it to the place? But the clinic was 25 minutes away, and I guess the sperm is only good for 20. There are tube socks in my hamper that would beg to differ. So I had to go to the clinic where they put in that room with a hollow core door that's been undercut because they used to have shag carpet. You can hear the nurses clomping around outside and clucking like chickens. A tile floor, a hollow core door, and 1.25 inches of daylight underneath it actually acts as an amplifier. It's a good thing I had a lot of roommates and learned how to rub one out while they were 12 feet away or without making noise. They could be in the next room stabbing each other with fireplace pokers and I could still finish off. I'm a ninja when it comes to masturbating. I'm like a safecracker. I work quickly and I work alone. At the clinic they offer you porn, and at first you have to pretend to be confused. Pornography? You say, don't believe I know that word. It's pictures of nude people, right? I was unaware of this invention. Well, if you say so, I'll try anything once. You're the expert, and it's always the poorest selection. The basket of porn is like a kid's plastic pumpkin a week after Halloween. The Reese's, Snickers, and Almond Joys have been pilfered, and all that's left are a few scattered Necco wafers and dog-eared Hustler and Seika on the cover. You end up beating off the chicks from the 80s with Nagel paintings behind them who died of a drug overdose 10 years ago. My cock was insulted. The pocket in the seat in front of the Southwest flight has more jackable material in it than this porn basket at the fertility clinic. We did a man show bit once where Jimmy and I went into one of those clinics. We were going to compare our sperm count to see whose count was higher, but we also decided to race to see who could produce it the fastest. So we stood in the hallway. One of the producers, Beth Einhorn, hit a stopwatch and we sprinted into our rooms. By the way, this was Beth's first day, so it must have been bizarre to explain to her loved ones when they asked, "How was your first day on the new job?" "Oh, I timed 2 guys while they spunked into cups." So it was essentially the cock against the clock. I came bursting out of the room 3 seconds before Jimmy, but that was only because he had the dignity to pull his pants up before exiting. We accounted for that and realized we were on exactly the same jizz clock. It's like when women work together for long enough and their cycles sync up. So years later, when my wife and I were trying to get pregnant, I'm at this fertility clinic, and I know I can wrap this up pretty quickly. But I don't want the nurse to watch me walk into the room, tie her shoe, and then see me walking out with a bucket of jizz. So I did the casual jack move, and the one you see the guys from the gangbang porns doing. It's the masturbation equivalent of the runner at the spotlight jogging in place to keep the heart rate up, or a Golden Gloves boxer who fight isn't for another hour shadow boxing. Cutting to the chase, my sperms were fine. My wife's eggs were fine, and there was no reason we couldn't get pregnant. A couple of months and some in vitro fertilization later, Lynette did eventually get pregnant with my twins, the boys and what's her name. This seems like the best place to recall a horrible yet hilarious moment in my life. It was my first night at Dancing with the Stars, and everyone was a bundle of nerves. Marissa Jarrett Wincor, the chubby chick from Hairspray on Broadway, was one of the contestants, and she was especially anxious. She was taking the competition very seriously, and she was due to dance last. The only thing more nerve-wracking than dancing in front of 20 million people is pacing around for an hour and 45 minutes waiting to do it. People were giving her stupid advice like, have fun out there, and other shit that isn't constructive. A, that's not advice. B, nobody has ever had fun because somebody yelled at them to have fun. After my dance, I left the stage and ran into pacing on the verge of throwing up Marissa. I could tell she was all up in her head, so I pulled her aside and thought I would offer her some sagely advice that would calm her nerves. I said, you're not going to have fun out there, you're going to have an experience out there. Don't run from it, or try to mask it with a shot of Patron. Embrace it. It's a crazy rush. Then I continued, it's like giving birth. It's painful, it's scary, but it's life-affirming. You don't want to be passed out and not experience the miracle of childbirth. Then, like a moment out of the episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm, she immediately replied, I have cervical cancer and both my ovaries removed. Wow. We have a surrogate that's pregnant right now. And other contestant, Penn Jillette, started laughing maniacally at what had just gone down. Visually, it was surreal because she's 5'1" in heels, and Penn Jillette, with his dance shoes on, his knocking on the floor, he's about 7 feet. Plus, he's a comedian and a magician, so I thought they were screwing with me. I persisted. No, seriously. Are you sterile? Did you have your parts removed? No fallopian tubing at all? She said yes, she was barren. It was like an ashtray down there. I had put my Capizo right in my mouth. I thought the whole childbirth thing was a great analogy, but I sent Marissa out to her first dance thinking about her long-lost ovaries instead of her double paso doble. I'm sure it would be a little comfort to her, but being pregnant and giving birth is a big pain in the ass as it is a pain in the vagina. The first thing that happens when you get pregnant is every dickhead tells you how it's going to change your life. It's not that big of a deal, but what it is with the worrywarts who want to talk you into being scared of the whole thing, what they do get out of it, they'll be like, what about college? Better start saving now. Let's get the kids out of the uterus before we start trying to get them into Harvard, you know? Or especially these guys who will say, forget your sex life, it's gone. You might as well just rip your dick off and stab yourself in the eye with it. Then when it comes time to give birth, you'll get a load of idiots talking about natural birth. People will say, you know, don't need to have a physician. I understand I might not need one, but we do have them. These are the same jagoffs who say, we can do dentistry without numbing. Yeah, but you do have something called Novocaine, right? Go get it. We're not a Civil War battlefield. Why are some kind of progress good, but other kinds are bad? Tomorrow I'm leaving for New York to do a television show and meet the woman who's editing this book, and it's going to take me 5 hours in the air, but according to a handful of nut jobs, I should take a covered wagon and eat my own leg on the donor pass. These natural birthers are right up there with the restore your foreskin people who are just wackos and don't give a shit about restoring foreskin. They're trying to restore a hole in their childhood by filling it with a cause, getting so wrapped up in something that falls under the heading of who gives a shit. It means there are deep underlying psychological issues, whether it's natural birth restoring foreskin or toxin flushing through colonics. Stop talking to me about it and start talking to a therapist. Another aspect of our relentless androgynous culture is getting men involved in the whole birthing process. This happened to me. First they were like, hey, we have the sonogram. Here's a picture of the kids. Keep it. They'll get a kick out of it when they're older. I replied, I don't think they'll care. The woman said, how could it hurt? I shot back. How could it help? Did she think someday my son would be showing this to his high school football buddies? They looked like two hamsters in formaldehyde. Why are men talked into being in the room during birth? I would have preferred not to be in the room. First, it's not a big room. It's not a gymnasium or a blimp hangar. It's small and cluttered with people and equipment. Do you need another jack-off standing around who doesn't know what the hell he's doing? We have the policy across the board in life. You can't mosey behind the counter of a McDonald's and start making your own Big Mac, so why here? All they do in hospitals is tell you, excuse me, sir, you need to wait, you can't go in there, etc. Yet with the room, it's come on down. They might as well put Western doors on that room with a guy who looks like Jed Clampett saying, come on in, pull up a stool, sit a spell. Before you go into the OR for the C-section, they put you in a holding room where you nervously wait for time to pass. This was a medium-sized room with 2 beds and 1 bathroom. We were the only couple occupying it. As I was leaving the bathroom, I ran into the nurse, who told me in a rude tone, sir, that bathroom's only for patients. Your bathroom's down the hall. I answered her in the way I answered all shitheads with a pointless agenda, with a vacant stare and a subtle, so what are you going to do? Later on, she overheard me talking on the cell phone and calling her a bitch and had to swing by to make sure I knew she heard me. After the kids were born, some nervous co-workers came up and basically apologized for her, saying she did that with everyone. She's not a nice person and they don't know what to do about her. I told them I had a novel idea. Perhaps they should fire her ass. This was the most stressful day of my life, not counting the Rams' first Super Bowl appearance, and I got to have Screwface Nightingale up my ass engaging in one of my least favorite behaviors, the lecture about the thing that has already happened and will never happen again. Hey cunt, I just emptied my bladder and we're going down to the OR in the next 20 minutes, so unless I funnel a 12-pack of Milwaukee's best, I doubt I'll head back into the commode anytime soon. And it's not like I'm going to be back in the following weeks with a new set of twins. I, with the help of my insurance, just gave your establishment thousands of dollars. Perhaps you could holster the stink eye and get back to your first love, mercy killing. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's up to all of us to verbally abuse these douche nozzles. The more they're humored, the more empowered they become, the worse society gets. And then there's cutting the cord. The story is a metaphor for my life. It's another example of somebody trying to get me interested in something I'm not interested in and not taking no for an answer. Would you like to cut the umbilical cord? No thanks, I'm cool. You'll regret it if you don't. I'll take my chances. It's real important experience. Is the guy who normally cuts the umbilical cord not available? If so, tell me. If not, please shut the hell up. I've wasted at least a third of my life telling people no for the 5th time. I understand why they think it might be an important experience for me. What I don't understand is what's in it for me to convey that to me for the 5th time. And when did everyone buy into this notion that we had to start bonding with our kids at zygote? Here's how you'd bond with your kids and imprint positive parental imagery. You be a dang good effing parent. You take an interest in what your kids are interested in, you encourage them, you communicate with them, and you see if you can keep the beatings and the molestations to every other weekend. If cutting the cord created some kind of magical bond, then how come none of us have that with the doctor who cut our cords? Does anyone even know the name of the guy who cut their cord or where they are now? No. Why? Because we don't give a shit. And do you think Bill Gates or Winston Churchill or Evel Knievel's dad cut their cords? Hell no. And they turned out pretty good. Anyway, I told anyone who would listen that not only did I not want to cut the cord, I didn't even want to be in the building. I thought I'd be out in the parking lot handing out cigars. But the next thing you know, somebody handed me a pair of shears and said, start cutting. I said, but they already cut the umbilical cord. We were standing 6 feet away over a clear plastic table. The guy said, oh, you don't cut it when it's attached, it's just symbolic. Now I was confused and pissed. The entire time assholes were telling me how important it was to cut the cord, and I was saying I don't want to perform surgery on my wife. They neglected to mention the part where I was cutting a ½ inch of the cord off after it had already been cut. I attempted to put the right hand cutting shears into my left hand and almost dropped them onto my daughter's eyeball in the process. I was in the end forced to cut my kids' cords, and I can guarantee you that any of the unspoken good vibes that were created with my kids because of this act are far outweighed by the deep-seated resentment I have toward them for forcing me into it. And in our effort to give every kid a gender identity disorder, the first thing we do is put them in pink and blue striped beanies. Not pink or blue, pink and blue. Are we trying to turn every child into a David Bowie circa Ziggy Stardust he, she? And once they go into the nursery, there's 30 kids spread out. They're all swaddled up in these Tupperware bins, and one of the ways you can recognize your kid, or at least narrow down the field, is by gender. If they showed me two kids, one with a blue beanie and the other with a pink beanie next to each other, I'd go, there are the Carolla twins. Now, when you get hold of them, especially when you have twins, you can't tell them apart. I still can't tell them apart. The brainiac who had the idea of a confusing, ambiguous light blue and pink striped beanie should be shot. Have any other great ideas? How about instead of red for stop and green for go, we mix them and have one big brown light? Stupid retard. And is the 50-50 version any cheaper than a solid powder blue or pink beanie? No, it's probably more expensive. Just buy 1,000 pink units and 1,000 blue units and stop the gender bending. Giving birth is tough, but let's not treat it like it's anything more than it is. I can't stand the mommy bloggers, the women who have kids and then decide to go online and write about the do's and don'ts. You know, hard-hitting topics like sack lunch, friend or foe. It's all the same 40-year-old white chicks. They act as if they're the first women on the planet to give birth. It's so narcissistic. Meanwhile, the Nicaraguan woman who is actually taking care of their kids has 4 of her own in high school. Actually, 3 dropped out, but the point is that she crapped out 4 kids when she was 19 through 21, and they're all fine. The whole world crapped out kids before these bitches, and obviously they were crapped out too. You're 41, and all of a sudden, after you have a kid, you must write a children's book and a blog to explain to other people how to do it. You're telling us stuff we've already known for billions of years. I'd be as if I discovered beating off at the age of 40 and had to tell all my friends, attention fellas, there's a way to have an orgasm without hiring a prostitute. You grab your own cock and you just pull it. It feels awesome. Are you listening? Why aren't you writing this down? Moving on to the end of life, aging sucks. Here's how a guy, you know there's no God. The only parts of a man's body that keep growing are your balls, your ears, your nose, and 3 parts of your body you wish that would get smaller. Not your biceps or your cock, those wither away. The shit you wish would grow gets smaller, and the stuff you don't want to grow sags. It's no picnic for the ladies either. At least as men get older, they get better looking. The hair gets gray and they get dignified. Dr. Drew gets sexier as he gets older. There's not one guy who said, Liz Taylor, I would have hit that at 19, but now that she's 75, I want to nail her. I'll break that other hip. You also know you're starting to get old when you go into the swimming pool wearing a hat and sunglasses. When you're young, you're frolicking, doing cannonballs, and playing Marco Polo. The more you wear going into the pool, the older you are. I'm only 45 and I go into the pool with a shirt, hat, and sunglasses, which means I'm this close to getting into the 3-piece suit, spats, and pocket watch with a monocle. We insist on making fun of old people in this society. Lots of jokers about grandpa and his depends, how slow grandma drives, etc. Considering we all hope to live to a ripe old age, this seems horribly ill-conceived. Making fun of a group you pray to one day be a part of would be like joining the Klan right after you made the transformation that Robert Downey Jr. did in Tropic Thunder. Why would we make fun of something that, God willing, we're going to become? I suggest we get back to basics, making fun of Polacks and Puerto Ricans. I love when the news shows people, usually from another country, who just hit their 100th birthday. They inevitably ask them the stupid and predictable question about what they did to live so long. The answer is never from eating fruit and exercising every day. They tell you that they get up, have a shot of brandy, smoke a pack of Lucky Strikes, eat a Twinkie wrapped in Canadian bacon, go to work at the asbestos factory where they have a hearty lunch of styrofoam peanuts, and come home for a 6th tumbler of grain alcohol. By the way, these people probably drank tap water every day of their 100 years, loved peanuts, and never touched a drop of Purell. Then after we get the non-information from the unwrapped mummy on the news, we get to hear the anchors laugh and say, he's 100 years young. I hate that cliche. Even worse is, he died of a broken heart. People always say that when a person's spouse dies and then he dies a couple of days later. It's dumb. Technically, everyone dies of a broken heart. It stops beating. And the other stupid death-related cliche is, you can sleep when you're dead. I don't think that's been confirmed. You may be able to sleep when you're dead, but what if you can't? What if it's like flying coach when you're up against the bulkhead and your seat won't recline? I don't know about you guys, but I'm not taking any chances. I'm going to take a nap. After you die of a broken heart, your poor relatives are going to have to cough up for a funeral. This is another time when dickheads try to extract money from you with guilt. We do from the cradle to the grave. When you have kids, they'll try taking you into the expensive preschool by saying things like, "Don't you want your kid to have a head start? Don't you want this for your child?" No, he's 2. He's eating a Lego and shitting himself right now. I don't need to spend the equivalent of a down payment on a house so he can play with finger paints. I've already regaled you with a tale of my son and the corrective helmet. They play on your guilt. That's from ages 0 to 10. Then at some point you die, and it becomes, I think your Uncle Ted would want the ambassador casket. I think your Uncle Ted is dead. He's not part of this conversation. I know you're trying to guilt me into the velvet-lined coffin with gold trim, but I'm pretty sure his corpse is indifferent to which box he decays in. Though I do think it could make a lot of money with the idea for a big and tall funeral parlor. Everyone is getting bigger nowadays, so I'm sure the coffins and grave plots have had to kick it up a notch too. Why not a big and tall funeral parlor? I'd call it larger than life. I could even sell the funeral suits for the deceased at my big and tall men's shop. Big Sir. I don't like to tell people about deaths in the family. It's not because I'm narcissistic or too wrapped up in my own shit. It's because it puts people in an uncomfortable position. There's that awkward pause. Then the person feels compelled to offer up some loss in their life and never a direct comparison. Oh, my cat just died. So I know that what you're going through. This is usually followed by the, if there's anything I can do, as if you're going to take them up on it. You know, a fresh coat of wax on the car will really take the sting out of Grandpa's demise. I went to a funeral once where the rabbi mispronounced the name of the deceased no fewer than 28 times. There should be a policy where if the person speaking says, "Although I didn't know, Gabe," you should be able to shout, "Then get the F off the stage." The Sandman from Showtime at the Apollo should come out and sweep you off. Sit down and let someone who knew Gabe up there. At my funeral, I don't want some guy saying, "I didn't have the pleasure of meeting Alan Carolla." This is one of the drawbacks to the Jews doing their funerals the next day. They could use a little extra prep time to get off the prompter. I want a big turnout at my funeral, not for me, but for the people I leave behind. I want them to be surrounded by others. I want people around my widow and my many trophy widows. Plus, open pews at the funeral is like a restaurant where there's only one other couple eating there. It's sad. And I want it abundantly clear that I wouldn't want you to go on working after I die. People say, "That's what he would have wanted." No, I want you to drop everything, clear your calendar. I want a national day, nay, a national week of mourning with flags at half-staff across the country. I want the flags on the greens of the golf courses at half-staff. And I want wailing and crying. I need a big black woman to throw herself on the casket and say, "Take me." I want the entire cast of Precious screaming like a banshee and trying to jump into the open grave. I never get that kind of emotion from my own family. It would be like having Marcel Marceau there, and they're so cheap they'd probably try to make me bring the champagne to my own wake. When my grandfather Laszlo died, the Carolla spent with the most pathetic post-mortem option possible, the Neptune Society. This is the group that cremates your loved ones and scatters their ashes in the ocean. Sounds classy, right? Think again. You just call them up, "Hey, Grandpa is dead." And they say, "All right, Bert will swing by in about 45 minutes. He'll probably drop by Arby's, get a little dinner first." In my grandfather's case, the guy just showed up at 4 a.m. in a station wagon, not a hearse, a regular station wagon. He filled out a couple of forms and tossed Grandpa in the back of the wagon. I'm surprised he didn't put the corpse in the passenger seat so he could use the diamond lane on the way to the crematorium. We never saw the body again. I don't even know if they cremated him. There were no oceanside speeches, no golden urns, no rose petals floating in the bay. That would cost an additional $50. Just some dude in a fake wood-paneled station wagon. It cost something like $280. My grandfather's funeral cost less than my blender. The only less dignifying option would be to leave him on the curb on trash day here in LA. The black bin is for trash, the blue is for recycling, and brown is for dead relatives. Over the years, I prepared a list of things I want to do before I die. Have my hands registered as weapons. Get kicked out of a casino for winning. Jump into a body of water with a knife between my teeth. Have a cape removed on stage. Have sports jersey pulled over a nice suit. Be killed by the person I told to kill me if I start to become a zombie. Wipe down a gun. Silently communicate / point to my watch underwater. Punch out my undercover partner who is about to say something he shouldn't and blow our cover. Play bass in an all-black band and be the only white guy and whisper something on stage to the conga player and then laugh. Put my hand over the mouth of a beautiful woman to stop her from screaming and alerting the bad guys. Get shot at and brush it off, saying, I ain't got time to bleed. Be able to say someone attempted suicide over me. She threw herself on the train tracks. Catch a punch and twist the guy's hand until he goes down to his knees. Have a celebrity shorten my name in an interview, Bobby. De Niro says working with Ace was great. He be embroiled in a lawsuit that leads to a heroic story. I broke the leg of a gangbanger robbing a liquor store, and now he's suing me. Stop a crime by throwing something. A guy steals a purse and starts running. I could throw a can of corn football style and knock him out. Track someone, I dismount my horse, then do it that low squat where I pick up a clump of dirt and let it sift through my fingers. Hawk a championship belt or Super Bowl ring at a pawn shop when I hit rock bottom. Shout, release the hounds. Be lost in the Utah desert with a hot chick, then come across an old Indian guy and speak his language. Pull a fake mustache out from someone and say, aha. Have a hot towel on my face at a barber shop with a cigar sticking out. Dislocate my shoulder to get out of a straitjacket. Snap Larry King's suspenders and turn him into a pile of ashes. Shout, not on my watch. Direct a movie called Awesome, so that the entertainment shows will have to refer to me as Awesome Director Adam Carolla. Then follow it up with a sequel hung like a rhino. Drive a car off a pier into a garbage barge. Be stripped of a crown. Tell my team to synchronize watches. Dry shave with a machete. Pull down a surgical mask and say, there's nothing I can do. Or beat someone on the chest and shout, live, damn you. Box a kangaroo. Demand unmarked bills. Drape a suit jacket over handcuffs in front of me like John Gotti. Fend off a Kodiak bear with a torch. Pop the locks off a attaché case full of money and slide it across the table. Be tied to a chair with a hot chick. Have to choose between cutting a red wire or blue wire. Fight someone on top of a moving train. My biggest regret is that I hear you fart a couple of times after you die and I won't be around to enjoy it. Inappropriately enough, laugh my ass off. Conclusion of the book. Thank you for purchasing, borrowing, winning this book in the world's worst charity raffle. No matter how you got it, I appreciate you taking the time to read it and listening. I know that this book covered a lot of ground, from politics to pizza toppings, flying first class to taking ceramics class, homophobia to home improvement. I have many, many more things to say about these and other topics, but that's not until the next book. So until then, thank you and mahalo. And that's the end of the book. Some great advice from an amazing man, the Carolla, the Ace Man. And now it's time for me to say goodbye, and I am out of here. My producers are pieces of crap. This thing was fake and hot as hell. I'm sweating my ass off. These glasses I don't even use. So I hope I never have to see you guys again. Peace out. So long. Kiss my ass. I'm going to take a shit.